show me on your hands which numbers you want to see, do, go over, have questions about. Interesting number marks today. Okay, just so I can count. If you were a 1, raise your hand. Okay. If you were a 2, raise your hand. Okay. If you were a 3, raise your hand. I don't remember seeing 4s, but if you were a 4, raise your hand. Okay. And then 5. Just the rest. So let's do numbers 2, 3, and 5. Alright, so for number 2, we had to translate the following equation, but also solve it. So the quotient of, so everything after that is going to be divided together. A number more than, we are adding, and 3. So that's where our dividing happens. So a number more than 1 and 3 is what we're dividing. That is 5 is just equals 5. That's how we set that up. And now that we've translated, now we can solve it. Get x by itself. By first getting rid of the 3, multiplying 3 to both sides. And getting rid of the 1 by subtracting. And if we were to put that back in, 14 plus 1 is 15. 15 divided by 3 is 5, so it works. Questions on that one? Number 3, we had to evaluate. So put these into all the x's and y's. So we have negative 12 in parentheses squared on the outside, minus 3 times negative 5, 6 times negative 12. And then you needed to show each piece. So this would give us negative 144. Whether you multiply these two, or all of them at the same time is really few. So I'm going to multiply these two first. That would be plus 15 over 6, which would be 5 halves. And then if I multiply these two, I get negative 144 minus negative 60 over 2, so negative 30. To simplify to get negative 174. So if you didn't get that, fix it. If you did get that, good job. Make sure you're showing all your steps. Questions on that one? And then number 5. So Ms. Thorpe wants to send a package to a friend in Spain. I don't actually have friends in Spain, just so we're all clear. It costs $3 for the packaging and 20 cents for each ounce. If you pay $15.60, how heavy is the package? So start off with some variables. What you choose is up to you. I can call it X for number of ounces or the weight of the package, either or. And then to set up my equation, I know it's going to equal 1560. And in order to get that, I need a total, so I'm adding 3 and 0.20, and that's where my x goes. And then I'm solving. So subtract 3 on both sides. And divide both sides by 20. I want to say that's 63, but someone double check that one. Was 63 the answer? Okay. Questions on that one? In order to get full credit for that, you need everything listed here. Defining your variable, the equation, solving, and the answer. Not just the answer, not just the equation. Once you have that all written down, write your name on your answer sheet and pass those up. So, Lily, can you grab the one from behind you? Daniel, can you grab the one from behind you? Steve, can you grab the one from behind you? Mohammed, can you grab the one from behind you? And then Sophia, can you grab those? Pass those up. As soon as I get a second, I will grade those and then give it back to you. Remember that each time you get a shark bite, it's like a mini SOL to see if you were to take the SOL today, this would be your score relatively, because we've only talked about two units, so you wouldn't know much. So I need shark bite answer sheets, not shark bites. For this time only, but in the future it makes it longer. So all the work in the answer sheet be on this. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your course calendar. So everyone look at your course calendar. There are a bunch of important things on it to include. I will not see you at all on Wednesday because of the PSAT. The next time I'll see you is Friday. So this will be your calendar. For the next day I see you is Friday and continue. There are dust masks throughout this entire thing. All of them are due next Friday. That does not mean you should wait until next Friday, because that's at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that will be piled up for you to do next Friday, so you should be working on them throughout, but they are not due until next Friday. Your quiz is going to be on the 1st of November, and Friday, your test the Friday after that. That being said, those are going to go on marking period 2. All of this unit, dust masks, quizzes, tests, are going to go on marking period 2, which means your grade right now is going to be the grade that gets put on the marking period on the report card, unless you retake. So keep that in mind, or finish tests if need be. Questions about that first? I am sending this out on daily Canvas reminders, so if you get those and read those, thank you for reading them. I also sent this out in an email slash text over the weekend. It's also on the board in the class code section. The last day I'm accepting retake work, so this is all the retake work you need to do in order to retake, is Wednesday, November 1st. So for units 1 and 2, if you need to retake, Wednesday, November 1st is the last day to do retake work. If you don't have retake work done by November 1st, you're not retaking on the 2nd. So keep that in mind. I also wouldn't wait until those dates, because you have this week, next week, up until that week. The last day I'm accepting retake / missing work is the 2nd. So if all your retake work is done on the 1st, you can retake on the 2nd if need be. But if your retake work is not done on the 1st, you're not retaking on the 2nd, your grade stays as is. Questions on that? Yes.
What kind of retake?
So this same process that I've been talking about. Your test corrections, your original delta mass, and additional practice if need be. Okay. So keep those in mind. The little green book on your desk, that is for you to use whenever. It has good practice, so if you're ever looking for more practice, there's some in there. There's actually word problems from the last unit. There'll be stuff from this unit, next unit, and I want to say the unit after that. So it is good practice to hold on to if you ever need more practice. Alright, so everyone should have notes that look like this. I'm going to have you write down a bunch of definitions. Today we are talking about slope, which should be familiar to you as it was taught in 8th grade, but there are some concepts that you may have forgotten, so we're going to go over it again. So I'm going to have you guys write as I talk through. So slope, or a rate of change, is a ratio that shows how one variable changes with respect to another. On a linear graph, this is called the slope of the line. Slope is written as a ratio of the vertical change rise to the horizontal change run between any 2 points on a line. This remains constant for any 2 points on the same line. That means between point A and point B, the slope is the same as point B and point C, and point C and point D, and so on and so forth. Slope is written as a fraction in simplest form, and the variable for slope is m. Anyone still need anything from the rate of change part? I'm going to scroll this down a little bit. So I want you to also draw in these XY axes and write these 4 words underneath them: positive, negative, 0, undefined. As you're drawing these in, I'm going to draw in a graph. I want you to draw it to the best of your ability of what these are going to look like. So positive is going to look something like this. Make sure these have arrows at the end. Negative will be the opposite way. 0 will be straight across. And undefined will be straight up and down. We're going to talk about directions and how you can remember which directions are for what. So for positive, if I'm reading this left to right, it has to be a rise over a run. So when I think about rise over run, I think about when I get up in the morning. I usually sit up, I rise before I get out of bed. So I rise before I run, so think about that. So for positive, if I'm looking at this left to right, I'm going up and then to the right. Up and right are both positive directions. So if I have a positive over a positive, I get positive. But I can also look at this the opposite way. So if I'm starting over here, looking at it right to left, my rise in this case would be going down. And then I'm going to the left. down and left are both negative directions, but a negative over a negative is still a positive, so it still works. Negative is the opposite. So if I'm looking left to right, I'm going down and to the right. So I would have some negative over a positive, which would give me a negative. Or the opposite, right to left, my rise would be going up, and I would be going to the left. So I'd have a positive over a negative, which is the same as a negative. For a zero slope, am I going up or down? It's not rising at all. So I have some 0 over is going left or right, but 0 divided by anything is what? 0. It's not going to change. Okay. Undefined is the opposite. It is going up and down, but it's not moving left and right. So on your calculator, I want you to pick whatever number you want, your favorite number, divide it by 0. What happens? Do we get an answer? There was some error. We cannot divide it by 0. So when you get an error, and be careful because you could get this by accident, but when you get error, this is undefined. You cannot divide by 0. I'm going to write something down to help you remember the difference between 0 and undefined. We're going to use this a lot throughout the year. So I need you to write 2 things. This in this box, m equals rise over run, as well as these letters, H, O, Y, leave some space, V, U, X. Koi bucks stands for horizontal lines have 0 slope and are y equals. And then for the bucks part that's opposite, vertical lines have undefined slope and are x equals. So every time you see or hear something about a horizontal or vertical line, you should be thinking koi bucks. Horizontal lines have 0 slope and are y equals. Vertical lines have undefined slope and are x equals. Okay. So now we're going to find the slope of each line. To do that, we have to remember our rise over run. And we have to find 2 points on the graph, on the line, that crosses grid point with background grid lines exactly. So someone give me an ordered pair that they see on this line that crosses the background grid lines. So some of you are looking at me and not your paper. To find an ordered pair that crosses grid lines exactly. -3, what was that last one? So go here. So, and it was -2, -2. Someone give me one more. Go ahead. Say that one more time. 1, 1. So right here. Is that on that line? No, exactly.
1, 3.
1, 3. So you have to be very careful because this one's like crossing the corner of it. It's not exactly on it. There is another point that's drawn for you, though.
What?
What was the point?
Positive 5.
For x or for y?
For y.
Okay. So what is the x value?
Negative 2.
Negative 2? Or positive 2? You guys think about
Positive.
positive 2, positive 5. So I'm also having you guys do this to remind you what order pairs are and how you find them. Look for x values and then y values, opposite of slope, whereas y's over x's. Okay, so we have these 2 points. Now we're going to count our rise over our run. So it does not matter which point you start with. So let's say I start with this one. My rise, I'm going to go up. I'm going to go straight up, not diagonal, and see how many units I'm rising. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then from that point at the top, how many units am I going to the right? So if I have a positive over a positive, I should get a positive in return, 7/4. Every time we write our slope, we need to put m equals to define what we're looking for. Right? The reason I said it doesn't matter, you don't have to do this, but can you suppose? If I started at the other point, and I am doing my rise, so I have to do up or down. I can't go up, so I have to go down. So I'd be going down 7 and left 4. Which would make that a negative 7 over a negative 4, which would still be a positive. So it doesn't matter which way you look at it, as long as you are counting accurately. Questions on that? Right. Number 2, give me 2 more order pairs. Give me 2 order pairs on number 2. Okay.
Or 2.
Okay. One more.
1, 2.
What was that last number? 3. So that wasn't a drawn on point, but it was a point. So sometimes there won't be points at all and you have to find points, and sometimes there will be and you can just look at them. So if you found a different point, that's okay. I'm going to show you why here in a second. So let's find the slope from these 2 points. Let's say I'm starting at this one and I have to do my rise. How many am I going down? 1. You don't have to draw the arrows. This is just if it helps you do that. And then how many am I going to the right? So because I have a negative over a negative direction over a positive, this is going to end up a negative 1/3. That means every time I go down 1 to the right 3, I should end up at another point. I would if I had more graph space. But also the opposite. Every time I go up 1 and to the left 3, I should also end up at another point. So up 1, left 3, up 1, left 3, which is where the other point was. And if I counted from here to here, I'd be going down 3 and right 9, which simplifies to negative 1/3. So it doesn't matter which 2 points you use. You should get the same thing no matter what. Questions on that one? Yes. Yes. Great. Give me 2 order pairs for number 3. Points that cross across the grid lines exactly for number 3. Sure, so give me one specifically. -1, +2. -1, +2 would be up here. -1, -1 would be one of them. Someone give me one other. What is it?
5, -1.
Sure. Not one of the given points, but that's okay. In cases like this, you won't even have to really do this, and I'll show why. Because I'm not rising at all, whether I start at the left or the right, that won't matter. What was it, 6? Because anything divided by 0 is going to be 0. So if I see a horizontal line, I can automatically take my $40. I don't need to count. I can say it's going to have a 0 slope. So what would number 4 be? The slope would be undefined. You can put U in D. You can spell it out, either or. Just make sure you're putting N equals. So if you see horizontal or vertical, be thinking 0 or undefined. Be thinking your $40. Okay. Questions on any of those? Go on to the next page. There are lines at 7 and 10. My numbers are off, but mine, 9 and 12 are yours, 7 and 10. If you want to draw those in to make sure you can see them. Questions 5 through 19. Are there any we want to see, do, go over, have questions about? So I'm going to give you maybe 8 minutes to try as many of these as you can, 5 through 19. If you finish all of them, raise your hand, I'll come check them. If you have questions about any of them, raise your hand and I'll come by. You should practice a good amount of these. Are there any that we wanted to see, do, go over, double check before we move on? Side note, I forgot to mention that I will not be after school Tuesday, tomorrow, because I forgot about my sister's doctor's appointment. So I will be after school Wednesday, Thursday this week, but not Tuesday, and then every day next week, and then Tuesday, Wednesday. Yeah. Go on to the next page. So I want you to write this slope formula on that page. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, to write this down. Great. Some of you may remember using this, some of you may have not. That's okay. If you need to remember this, but if you forget the orders, forgetting some of it is okay, and I'll explain why. If you switch these two, so let's say you do y1 minus y2, that's okay if you also switch the bottom two. So whatever number this is, 1 or 2, if it matches up with 1 or 2 in the denominator, that's fine. But if you don't switch both, you're going to end up with a positive when it should have been negative, or vice versa. What also cannot be switched. Y's are your rise, X's are your run, is your run, whatever. So Y's have to go in the numerator, X's have to go in the denominator. They cannot be switched. Right? So we're going to do a few of these. if this helps you do this, I label these so I know which one is which. X1, Y1, X2, Y2. They're all ordered pairs, X, Y, but I just label them X1, Y1, and then X2, Y2. That way I know which one goes where in this formula. So then I'm going to put it in there 3 minus 1 over 4 minus 1. And then we just subtract, simplify. So 3 minus 1 would give us 2. 4 minus 1 would give us 3. If it could be simplified anymore, we would do that, but it cannot. So 2/3 is our slope on this. We are always subtracting no matter what, even if there are negatives. So let's try example number 2. So we have negative 2 minus 4 over 10 minus a negative 2. We're subtracting always, whether we have a negative or not. So the negative minus would come together and make a plus. So if you want to make a plus, make that a plus, you can. But I wouldn't just start making pluses because it may confuse you. Negative 2 minus 6 would give us, sorry, I give you the answer. Negative 2 minus 4 would be negative 6. And then 10 minus a negative 2, 12. Because they'd really be adding. And then can that be simplified? Negative 1/2. Means every time I go down 1 to the right 2 or up 1 to the left 2, I'm going to end up at another slope point. Right, questions so far? We're going to skip 3 and 4, move on to 5 and 6, and then we'll talk about some of these fraction ones. So for number 5, same process. X1, Y1, X2, Y2. And we'll have 9 minus 9 over 3 minus 5. So we have 9 minus 9 gives us 0. And because of this, it doesn't matter what I get in my denominator, this is going to be 0. So if you look, your y values are the same. That's going to tell you have a 0 slope. You still need to do the work, but that could help you remember I'm going to get a 0 slope here. Similarly, in number 6, we have 5 minus 8 over negative 7 minus a negative 7. 5 minus 8 would give us negative 3. What would happen in the denominator? 0. And anything over 0 is fine. So in this case, your x values are the same, and that will tell you you're going to have an undefined slope. Do we have any questions on how to find slope from 2 points in general before we do subtraction ones? You may want to either grab a separate sheet of paper or turn your paper sideways so that you have this space to work. So we're going to try number 7. Right. And with this, we're going to do the exact same thing we were just doing. So I'm going to label these x1, y1, x2, y2. And then I'm going to subtract 3/4 minus 2/5 all over 1/3 minus 2/3. Doesn't look nice. Right now. If we have common denominators, we can go ahead and subtract. But if we don't, we have to make common denominators. So like our denominator fractions, we could go ahead and subtract. I'm going to wait. But our numerator fractions are not the same, so we have to get them to be the same. So we have to think of something that both go into, something we could multiply something to get 20. So if I multiply this by 5 to get 20, I also have to multiply this part by 5. Multiply this by 4, same thing here. So you're changing all the fractions, or for the numerator at least. You have to keep that denominator, keep bringing it along. Now everything has common denominators, so we can subtract. 15 minus 8 would give us 7. And then the 20th stays the same, so 7 20ths. And this would give us negative 1/3. So it's more simplified, but not the most simplified. We don't want fractions within fractions. I'm going to show you how to fix that, and then I'm going to show you on the calculator. I'm just rewriting so I have more space. If you have space to do this, you don't need to rewrite. Previously, when we were simplifying and we said something about instead of dividing the fractions, we could multiply by the reciprocal. We're going to do the same thing here, but take the denominator fraction, flip it, and multiply it to the denominator fraction and the numerator fraction. So we're taking the denominator, multiplying it by its reciprocal. Because here this becomes 1, and then we can just multiply across to get what?
Negative 21
Negative 21 over 20. Now it's in its most simplified form. This is an advanced algebra 1 concept. So if this is too much, too hard, think about it'll only get harder from here. So keep that in mind. Do we have any questions about this process right now? So I'm going to show you how to do this part in the calculator. Everything else you should be doing by hand. This part you can either do by hand or in the calculator. So you have to do exactly what I do. Everyone grab your calculator, clear it out if there's anything up there. Go into alpha y equals. In the top part, do it again. Alpha y equals. Scroll all the way to the bottom. And do it again, alpha y equals. And then we're going to put in those two sets of fractions. 7 20ths and negative 1/3. So if you did not get negative 21 20ths, you did not put it in exactly as I just said. So alpha y equals. In the top part, do it again, alpha y equals. All the way at the bottom, do it again, alpha y equals. If you don't do it exactly like that, you're going to end up with a fraction somewhere else. You want this fraction to divide this fraction. If this fraction bar, the longer one, is somewhere else, not directly in the middle, you put that in incorrectly. So fix that. Questions on that? We're going to do one more of these, and then I'm going to let you try 2 of them. We're going to do number 9. So now these are in mixed numbers. So now we have to change them to improper fractions and do what we just did. So just in case we have forgotten or don't remember how to change this, multiply the bigger number in the denominator. Whatever number you get, add it to the numerator. Put that all over 3. So this would be 6 plus 2 is 8, all over 3. And then same thing here, multiply, so 8 plus 1 is 9, all over 2. And then we're going to do the same process we just did. 9 halves minus 1 over 3 minus 8 thirds. We have to get common denominators again. The whole numbers are really fractions with ones underneath them. They're invisible. So to make these common denominators, I can multiply this by 2 and this by 2. So go ahead and change all of those. So we have 9 halves minus 2 over 2 over 9 thirds minus 8 thirds. Then let's subtract our numerators. What would our two new fractions be? Seven halves over 1/3. And then we're going to do the same thing. Take this, flip it, multiply by the numerator and the denominator to get what would our new fraction be. Say that first part one more time. Means if I had a big enough graph, every time I go up 21 and over 2, or down 21 and left 2, I'd end up at another slope point. So a lot of these slope points would be decimals. If you have any questions on this process, the answer, anything from this one? I want you to try numbers 8 and 10. Work through those. When you finish, raise your hand and I'll come check them. I'll put the answers up first, and then if we want to go through them, I'll do that. Number 8, -6/5. Number 10, 11/4. We have questions on either of those. We need to see the work for either of those. So as I was walking around, I saw some of us mixing these up. Y's have to go together, x's have to go together, y's in the numerator, x's in the denominator. So be careful with that. Label these if need be. So we have 2/5 minus 3/5. If you switch these, that was fine. Over 2/3 minus 1/2. Either go ahead and subtract the numerator now or wait. You had to get common denominators here, so multiply by 3. You didn't have to be choose 6, but that was the lowest. We have 2/5 minus 3/5 over 4/6 minus 3/6, which would give us -1/5 over 1/6. And then if we took this and flipped it and multiplied it, we get -6 over 5. Other questions on 8 or questions on 10? Okay. For 10, double check that you have the right improper fractions. I did not show you this, but I meant to. If you want to double check, or put your mixed fraction in and change it to an improper fraction. So what was the one? Why not? If I go into alpha y equals, and instead of the first one, I choose the second one, I can put in that number and press enter, and it will change it to an improper fraction. I meant to show you that before you did number 10, but if you got 3/2 and 49/8, those were the correct improper fractions. Alright, in about a little less than 10 minutes or something like that, I'll let you get your phones, but for this 10 minutes, I want you practicing, so you can choose one of the following. You can work on slope on Delta Math. Yes, it's not due until next Friday, but you can get it done now. There is additional practice on slope from a graph and slope from 2 points up here, front and back. These do not have the fractions. In your notes, at the very back, there are more slope with fractions problems. So choose one of those, work through that for the next 10-ish minutes, and then I'll let you grab your books. You can work together on those, move around if you so choose.